Are you willing to accept Christ's invitation to know Him more intimately, love Him more intensely, and follow Him more closely, and then go out into the world and live His good news? If you say yes, then you could be the 13th apostle. Join Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey, the odd couple of Catholic radio, as they ride the radio waves 2 by 2 to share the goodness, beauty, and truth of Jesus Christ and His church. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the 13th apostle.
If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, beautiful, and true of the Catholic Church, Catholic faith of Jesus Christ. This is Tom Caffrey, co-hosting with Dan Duddy. Hiya, Dan.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
See, last week you were indomitable. This week you're insurmountable.
Why are you saying that?
Because it's true. It's like I'm looking at the sun. The sun's up. I'm saying it because it's true.
Well, you know, you're not being consistent with who you were before the microphone went on. You weren't very nice.
My only consistency is my consistent inconsistency.
Yeah, that's right. You're perfectly imperfect.
Yeah, you're talking. All right, Danny, you're... sometimes, we're up in the clouds. Sometimes we're man in the street.
Yeah.
And so we talk about basic things of life, and you sound like you have a cold or something.
I do. Yeah, I've had this cold for probably 6 months. I'm not sure it is a cold. I don't know what it is. I don't think about it too much. But there's something going on. I'll get over it.
Well, I hope all the people you have infected will get over it too if you've had it for 6 months.
Can't worry about everything, Tom.
No, you just gotta. I know. Obviously, COVID comes to mind, and I'll never forget my last day in one of my company clients before everything was locked down. And so I was working in a newsroom of this particular media company, media giant, and all of a sudden this young woman sneezed.
Yeah.
And then there was a hush. She looked around, terror-stricken. I'm sorry.
It was diabolical.
Never forget.
Oh my gosh.
I can see her face to this day. I probably see it to the end of time. It's I'll never forget that. Oh, jeez.
Sneezes aren't the same anymore, Tom.
No.
I sneeze, I run. I just run real fast before someone shoots me for sneezing.
I know. Gosh. All right. Well, we're getting close to it. We're actually, certainly colleges are reopening. And you teach at a high school, Catholic high school. And so, there's been summer class. I know you've been doing one. So you're interested in doing an episode on some of our, well, maybe we'd call them our education saints. What I'm guessing you found that article and it struck you. For me, for obvious reason.
Yeah, it didn't take too long. I'm looking for, like you do, episodes, subject matter. Some are based on current news. And of course, current news is, in this case, every September, we go back to school. And yeah, an article popped up. But, it's a basic article. And it's well written. It's written by a guy named Griffin, Thomas Griffin, who was the chair of the religion department, and it says at a Catholic high school on Long Island. Doesn't name the high school. But he brings to mind patron saints. And you and I talked about this. In fact, we had a great episode, I thought, great interview with Jeff Cavins, remember? And he talked about the posse of saints that we should develop, maybe a posse of 5 saints and how those saints relate to the different aspects of our lives. But at the time, I never looked at any member of my posse with regards to education, because I wasn't in the classroom yet. Remember, that was, 2 years ago, right? And now I've returned last January. And here I am now after coming out of summer school with a freshman group, summer theology school, for 6 weeks. And now with just maybe a 3-week gap heading into being hired back to teach 2 full semesters, a full school year. So I'm coming in with a whole different kind of feeling, a great deal of excitement. I never really felt this excitement before going into September for teaching purposes, but it definitely relates to the theological aspect of the subject matter that I'm now teaching. I was a special ed teacher, and I taught most of my special ed years, 40 years, but most of those years were in what's called an alternate school. And a small number of students, maybe 12, in a separate building from the campus, because they were students that could not handle the structure of the regular school building. And they were, maybe previous terms, incorrigible and words like that, reprobates. But of course, professionally and with a Christ-like heart, we don't call them that. But they were the ones that I really did. I related to them. I had great relationship with them, and they've always been dear to me. But here I am with a different.
Well, wait a second. Were you referred to that way when you were in school, or just
no?
Okay.
No, I wasn't. I don't think so. In fact, I know that I had parents come to me and say, "I wish my son would hang out with you more because, you make better decisions than he does." And that kind of injected an identity into me. I didn't think I was that kind of a good guy. I mean, I had my sinfulness and my faults, and that I definitely suffered with. But I guess in some cases, parents thought I was the last Boy Scout. So yeah, no, I wasn't really a reprobate or any of those words. It depends on who you're with, but somehow I really love the engagement with them, and I think it really was the fundamental start of the understanding of masculinity and injecting into them that they can have a purpose-filled life. And the apple in the tree syndrome, and a lot of these guys, they were cursed by their families. It was just a really, really tough situation. Tommy, their attendance in school was like 100%, and they hated school. So tell me where you think they were coming from, Daly. They did not want to be where they were coming from. They would rather be in school, and I know they hated school. So their home life was really, really difficult.
So let me jump in and say that I just got finished reading the memoir, I guess. Well, it's really more of a autobiography of J.D. Vance, our President Trump's vice presidential pick, and a Hillbilly Elegy. And wow, what a powerful story of his growing up in Appalachia, and his talking about school and the strife, the nonstop strife at home, multiple homes, multiple men who were, his parents divorced, and his mother had all sorts of troubles with drugs, drug addiction. He was like a revolving door with the men that would be in her life and acting as quote unquote his father, and what life was like, but also what school was like. It's so graphic. Yeah. And I thought, obviously, what you said, teachers are. It's a challenge, especially if there's a large student body or whatnot. Who knows what's going on at home, but I don't know. That's a whole nother topic. But when I read this article that you sent, and it was focusing on 4 saints: St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, St. John Bosco, and St. Catherine Drexel. There's a different time, certainly, and I'm sure the behavior. I'm not sure. I'm guessing, and I don't think anybody could prove that I'm right or wrong. We could just surmise that the students probably had more respect for authority than the students today. But of course, you have your experiences as teacher, and both public and private. And I know your public school teaching was a select group. I mean, it's special ed, so we can't really translate that to the general student body. But you know the experience. I know you've shared some of them with me over the years, with some of the backgrounds, the family life of these special ed students.
Oh yeah, there's
know?
no doubt. Yeah.
And to try to learn in that environment, I mean, you know, J.D. Vance, you know, if one turn or one person who was so helpful to him, if that person wasn't there at that time in his life, it would be like, you know, the dominoes falling in the wrong direction, and he could have gone so bad so easily.
There's no doubt about that. And the cracks are just as big, you know, where these kids can fall through the cracks, as we say, are just as wide in our parochial schools as they are in those tough public schools. Because it's really just a matter of putting your head on a swivel as a teacher and looking at the souls of the person that's in the desk, and then really, you know, going to them. And in this article, I really came to know, and I'll jump right to it now, the description of Don Bosco, St. John Bosco, also popularly known as Don Bosco, where he said, "Give me souls, take all the rest." That was his motto for his life of teaching. Give me the souls, take all the rest. So he wanted to go straight to the souls of his students. And he's famous for, you know, going after those homeless young men, tough men of the streets, and bringing them in and giving them vocational schools, teaching them vocation so that they could get out there, like I was alluding to before, so they could get hands-on with a purpose-filled life, and by doing so, find their masculinity, knowing that they now have something to give. Boys take, men give. Find their masculinity, that they have a skill, and therefore perhaps coming, and I know that they did, I trust that they did, become, you know, healthy fathers and husbands, and, you know, making God smile. So Bosco went right to their souls, and that's the greatest education, I think. I mean, I'm in a parochial school now. There's $15,000 a year to go there. So I do have different kids, but they all have their struggles. And their struggles come in different packages these days. They're fighting a different war, and their souls are getting lost in the culture. You know, it's a culture that just kind of sucks the soul out of you and then replaces it with some, you know, very superficial imitation of what a soul is, and they think they're doing okay. So I'm enjoying my time as a teacher of theology, and I'm going to stop for a minute to let you jump in, but I really want to get back to what was written about Aquinas as well, because I find that to be very practical for the classroom.
Well, before we get to Aquinas, or I should say Thomas, I want to bring up one aspect of John Bosco. And this is so compelling. It really jumped off the page at me, where Father Bosco later opened a vocational school for young boys. They were taught catechism along with shoemaking and tailoring. Now,
Yes.
that made me think immediately of the problem we have in one of the major problems in the American educational system, where it seems over the last 40 or 50 years, everybody was funneled to college, even though a significant percentage of them are not college material and shouldn't have gone that route. And some European countries, Germany is probably an obvious one that comes to our listeners' mind, and certainly my mind, where they had the two-track, and you know, the one is the vocational, where it's apprenticeship, and it's John Bosco. That's what he's doing. Okay, we're going to teach you reading, writing, and arithmetic, you know, the catechism, since you're Catholic, but we're going to teach you a trade as well. And because maybe you're not meant to, and certainly at that time, the vast majority of them wouldn't have gone to college, but they would learn a trade, and they could have a decent life. And that's one of the things we're missing here. It's like, I was just reading an article today. I'm trying to remember the publication, but it was about the difficulty, and this is unfortunately, this is you've heard this, everybody's heard this, where you trying to find a tradesman or a tradeswoman. The odds are it's going to be a tradesman. You know, you can't. It's hard to find them, and to have people take over. Oh, I know what it was. There was an article in the New York Times today about a guy. They were focusing on a guy. The column is called The Great Read. And this guy was 60-year-old EMT up in upstate New York. And his schedule made me exhausted. I mean, he still runs a farm. He's the leader of the EMT group, and he said the young people, he said they're not trained for it. They don't even have the consciousness for it. And he said it's so hard to find them. And he's concerned about that because in these rural communities, you need to be able to have, everybody needs access to the emergency health care, but it's getting more and more difficult to find that. And so with John Bosco talking about this trade and honoring a trade, and it says here, whatever you do, think of the glory of God as your main goal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, beautiful lesson. And if you want to talk about catechesis and trades, our Lord Jesus Christ was a carpenter. And the apostles, they were in the trades. I mean, fishing was the trade. They were the toughest guys in the trades. They're like North Jersey longshoremen. The reputation of the longshoremen. That's who the 12 were for the most part. The 12, as the fishermen, it was quite a trade. Yeah. So I mean, here we are talking about the trades. Don Bosco.
Wait, what do you think? I'm sorry you brought this up. So you know how my mind works.
No, I don't. I lose sleep over trying to figure that out.
You're going to find out. I remember when I first started carpentry. And the first time I hit my framing houses years ago.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And
I never pictured you climbing the ladder, banging a nail.
The first time I hit my nail. This is a Catholic program, so I can't. And I'm just wondering, do you think Jesus ever hit his nail with the hammer?
Of course he did.
Okay. Can you imagine what he would have uttered? Or do you?
I don't want to.
You don't want to. Okay. I'm just, there are so many primrose paths in life. And
get out of here. I know where you're going.
I like to walk people down. Now, I like to walk with them, but maybe have them a foot ahead of me when we go down, the primrose.
Yeah, I know. You're like, you're loyal. You're loyal way back there. You got my back way back there, though. I can still see you back then. Keep walking. I can still see you.
He had to hit his nail. People, I bet there are people out there, maybe in our audience, who think, "No, he was perfect. He was God. He never missed the head of the nail."
Well, he's all virtue. Of course he missed the nail. He was a man, so of course he hit his thumbnail. He had burn marks up and down his arm. Iron sharpens iron. Those things fly in sparks. I'm sure they landed in his eyes. I'm sure he absolutely said "ow," but I don't think he talks like you do before the mic gets turned on. That's a joke. I'm smiling.
Oh yeah, it's well. Okay, so enough of that. Enough of our humanity. So you wanted to talk about Thomas?
So Griffin wrote this article, and he brings into it the Thomistic historian and theologian. Help me with my French. Jean-Pierre Toriel. You know everything.
I'm never going to correct your French. Go ahead.
Okay, but he said that a person of Aquinas' capacity of study and preaching would have to possess the following capacities and functions. Firstly, they must be elevated by the eminence of their lives to be able to preach effectively. Secondly, they must be enlightened in order to teach suitably. And then fortified so as to refute errors through disputation. But let's explain. So elevated meaning that they are imitating the one that they teach about. So I'm in the classroom, the theological classroom. So I have to do everything I can to invoke the Holy Spirit within me, to bring the Holy Spirit into the classroom, to imitate the one that I'm teaching about, to be an imitation of Christ. Secondly, to become enlightened means that we are to see the truth, let our students see the truth that exists within them, so there's a level of autonomy in the classroom, so they can live their charism, Tom, right? So they can see themselves as attractive and attainable, which is a beautiful thing, and that's what I was alluding to in the alternate school. which Don Bosco was bringing to his young men by way of vocational training. But thirdly, and again, Bosco comes into this Aquinas description, is to continue the tough trials of teaching against the errors of the world. And the errors of the world in Bosco's days were that these young men were left behind. But the errors of the world today are insidious. It's a quiet compromise. It's a pulling out of the inner self, and our young men especially so, because that's more so where my heart goes, to the souls of the young men by way of the football field and whatnot. They really, really, they need to be elevated. They need to be enlightened, and they need to be fortified themselves, because they are the future teachers of the world by the walking of their very own created charism that lives within them. That's what we need to extract to them.
Well, I have a little partial to St. Elizabeth Ann Seton because of her role in founding one part of the big, well, certainly in the United States, the Sisters of Charity of St. Joseph. And I grew up right down the street from Seton Hall. At the time, both Seton Hall Preparatory School, Seton Hall Prep School, and Seton Hall University. Well, when my father attended, it was Seton Hall College. But I grew up right down the street, and it was a big influence on me, and mainly because of sports. It's named after Mother Seton, now Saint Elizabeth Ann Seton. And I, through my 8 years of elementary school, that was Sisters of Charity, and it was, and they rolled out. They're kind of like an army of these religious sisters in the United States to teach elementary schools throughout the country. I'm sure mainly in the East Coast and mainly in the Northeast, but still throughout other areas. So, for those two reasons, the Seton Hall and the Sisters of Charity. And, I have to say, I was at a family gathering over the extended weekend visiting my brother in Virginia. And there's most of them at the table, all but one, as a matter of fact, are, I don't like to say fallen away. I like to say walked away Catholics. Fallen almost like somebody tripped you up or something like that. But no, there was intent, But they know me and they know how I am. But one of them started talking, the usual thing I've heard countless times, I'm sure you have too as well. Or maybe you haven't because... Oh, no, you were... Well, did you have nuns all the way through elementary school?
Here and there.
Okay.
Maybe third grade, and then maybe again fifth grade.
Okay. So, grade. The way they're criticized. I've heard this for the last 3 or 4 decades, jokes about, how mean the sisters were. And some of them were. Yeah. But many of them were not. And, so I'm always defending them, calling out the way, I had some bad experiences with nuns, but I had some very good formative experiences with some nuns, especially Sister John Mora in 4th grade. Never forget her. And she happened to be physically and interiorly beautiful. Oh, even though I could only see her face. And they were, their experience during the French Revolution, and that I've given talks about the nuns of Compiègne in France and how they were, right? But how all the nuns, all the convents, all the monasteries were closed during the Revolution, and they were horribly treated, martyred and whatnot. But the Sisters of Charity sprung back to life, as I think in the early 1800s in France. So I think that, well, one of the things I liked about John Bosco is his influence by the order's founding, St. Francis de Sales. Right. And his work as an educator in response to the Protestant Reformation. And where Switzerland went to the Calvinists for the most part, Lutherans too. And the bishop sent, asked for a volunteer, and Francis de Sales volunteered to go there, go into the lion's den and debate, but also to do the corporal works of mercy and spiritual works of mercy, and led to a lot of conversions. Never complete. Switzerland is certainly significantly Protestant, but that's a role model for John Bosco in terms of how bold do you want to be as a teacher. So we're going to wrap this up. Let me see. Can we say Catherine Drexel? Well, I mean, she's one who put her money and her family's money where her mouth was, and helped out the native tribes and Americans, of African ancestry that were here, descendants of slaves and whatnot, that to help them out and to use her family's fortune, and what a role model.
Yeah, she saw that everyone on this planet has a thirst for knowledge and the need for such, and that's where she went. She decided to go, as Pope Francis says, really to the peripheries that were within her realm, and touch those hearts, those souls, and stir the cognitive energies that live within. Yeah, she's a good one. She's an interesting one for sure. Yeah.
Well, we'll close it out with Pope Pius XI in his encyclical Divini Ilius Magistri, those divine teachers. It's talking about the parents. Since parents have given children their life, they are bound by the most serious obligation to educate their offspring, and therefore must be recognized as the primary and principal educators, which is why many parents revolted over the last few years after COVID and found out what their children were learning. All right?
Heck yeah.
But they waited. They were uninvolved, as they shouldn't have been. They should have been more involved. But they learned their lesson. Hopefully a lot of them did. It seems like many of them did. So that's what we're called to do as parents. All right, there, Dennis. What's going on?
And Elizabeth Ann Seton, one more thing. Give some time, she says, even if it's only a half hour in every day, to devotional reading. And that's so, so, so important, she says. Half hour each day to devotional reading. All right, folks. Stay tuned for the Angelus and your prayer intentions with our good friend Peter and Jemmy.
WQPHradio.org. Thank you for your support, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you, Danny.
God bless you, Tommy. God bless you all.
Thank you for listening to the 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?